We find the defendant, Gregory Loomis, guilty.
Not guilty.
Guilty of manslaughter.
Guilty or not guilty? This is how Americans have helped keep crime in check for 2.5 centuries. But the U.S. jury system isn't perfect. For instance, it wasn't until 1968 that women were allowed to serve on juries in all 50 states. And while it's been illegal to exclude African Americans from jury duty for more than 135 years, they remain dramatically underrepresented even today. Each year, over 30 million people are sent a summons in the mail. From that, an estimated 1.5 million are selected to serve on a jury, and it's during that selection process when most of the problems emerge. Attorneys have a certain number of strikes or preemptory challenges where they can remove jury candidates without any explanation. For decades, it was perfectly legal to use these strikes on a discriminatory basis, and that's exactly what prosecutors did.
The prosecutor, time after time after time, was choosing to see white jurors and striking black jurors or jurors of color. Courts were routinely saying that there was not proof enough of discrimination.
The issue finally came to a head in 1986. The Supreme Court made it illegal to strike based on racial or sexual discrimination. But what has that really changed? Turns out prosecutors found ways to still discriminate.
In the 1990s, prosecutors in North Carolina received a cheat sheet about how to go to court and defend against claims of racial bias in a way that would allow them to pick a discriminatory jury.
The racial bias continued to be mostly unchecked and underreported well into the 2000s. Then finally, in 2010, a report revealed a shocking reality. Between 2005 and 2009, prosecutors in Houston County, Alabama had excluded 80% of blacks who qualified for jury service on death penalty cases.
Death penalty trials are infected from the beginning to the end with racial bias. We know overwhelmingly that prosecutors are far more likely to seek the death penalty when the victim is white. White lives matter more when we actually look at how the death penalty is applied. And that should be very, very troubling to all of us.
In fact, all white juries will convict a black defendant 16% more often than they would a white defendant. Adding to the issue is a group of experts called trial consultants. These are people who have boiled jury selection down to a science.
So in some ways, I think that that's one of the biggest challenges we face in the coming years, is actually from the trial consulting industries.
Trial consulting began in the early 70s with good intentions.
The people who were at the forefront were do-gooders. They wanted to make the system more fair. These were social scientists who said, let's bring the tools of social science to balance the scales, to remove racial bias in juries. Now the influence of money has meant that now the game is to make as biased a jury as possible.
And that's exactly what happened in 1994 during the O.J. Simpson murder trial. The defense team hired jury consultant JoEllen Demetrius. She closely examined the opinions and backgrounds of each of the 304 jury prospects. And she discovered something important enough that it was reenacted in the show The People vs. O.J. Simpson.
I'm surprised that black ladies liked O.J. so much. What exactly did they say?
Oh, it's very positive. They call O.J. handsome, masculine, and charming.
In the end, Demetrius helped the defense gain a jury of 1 black man, 1 Hispanic man, 2 white women, and 8 black women.
When you got the jury you wanted, did you think you had just won the case?
It is accurate to say that there was a big high five that went on back at Johnny's office at the end of that day.
And we all know what happened next.
We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant, Orenthal James Simpson, not guilty of the crime of murder.
Now, you could argue that Simpson's attorneys were just giving him the best possible defense. But unlike attorneys, trial consultants are not necessarily licensed and are not required to uphold a standard of ethics in the courtroom. And many criminal justice experts argue that this type of scientific jury selection crosses a line.
Jury consultants are really not there necessarily to create an impartial jury. They're there to pick a jury that they feel is going to be most favorable for their client. But the other side is doing the same thing. And the idea is through that battle, an impartial jury will eventually be developed.
Does that mean we can't do any better? Some judges are at least trying. The National Center for State Courts discovered that some are giving jurors more liberty.
We're experimenting with things like allowing jurors to ask questions of witnesses, allowing jurors to take notes, ensuring that jurors had a copy of the court's instructions with them in the jury deliberations room.
The hope is that the jurors who understand the case as best as possible will rely more on facts than their own biased opinions during deliberation. But it won't fix the bigger issue.
But with the problem of jury selection in particular, there's really no reason to have peremptory challenges. And I think that we, as state and federal court systems, should be moving towards getting rid of those peremptory challenges because they're really just an opportunity to discriminate.
No matter how you look at it, there's a lot of work yet to be done. But with each new ruling, we have a chance for real justice.